Hello, you're listening to Environmental Soup through the facilities of Trent Radio. And today I will talk about Bill C15 and why it's a problematic bill. There will be amendments after I record and that's coming in on Wednesday, which is the day after I'm recording this, the 25th. And then I will talk about an injury that a pedestrian advocate received in Vancouver or was impacted by unsafe streets. And additional news articles that I saw, and then if there's time I'll look at the environmental registry. So Bill C15 is an act to implement certain provisions of the budget, which was tabled on November 4th, 2025. It's a over 600-page document. One of the troubling sections is the Division 5 Red Tape Reduction Act. And I don't know what page this is on, but it is one of the problematic pieces of legislation, and there's probably other items as well. The purpose of the act is to control the administrative burden that regulations impose on businesses. And they're saying in Section 8, no action or other proceeding may be brought against His Majesty in the right of Canada for anything done or omitted to be done, or anything purported to be done or omitted to be done under this part. So the government is saying that they can't be sued, even though they're exempting a lot of legislation and regulations that include safety regulation, environmental regulation, any regulation. There was amendments, and I'll get into that as well. And they're saying an entity includes an individual or corporation, a partnership, an unincorporated association, or organization in His Majesty in the right of Canada or of a province. And there was an exemptions under 12.1. A minister may, by order for a specified validity period of not more than 3 years, and on any terms that the minister considers appropriate, exempt an entity from the application of a provision of the Act of Parliament except the Criminal Code, a provision of an instrument made under the Act of Parliament except an instrument made under the Criminal Code, if the minister is responsible for an act and the body that made the instrument is accountable through the minister, or to Parliament for the conduct of its affairs, or a provision of the Act of Parliament except the Criminal Code, or provision of an instrument made under an Act of Parliament except an instrument made under the Criminal Code, if the minister administers or enforces the provision. And there's some conditions A minister may make an order under subsection 1 only if the minister is of the opinion, the keyword opinion of the minister, that the exemption is in the public interest. The exemption would enable the testing of, among other things, a product, service, process, procedural, or regulatory measure with the aim of facilitating the design, modification, or administration of a regulatory regime to encourage innovation, competitiveness, or economic growth. That is problematic because a process could harm endangered species, and ministers aren't always knowledgeable about the environment, or they don't always prioritize the environment. So that's problematic, especially when we're in a climate crisis, a biodiversity crisis, and there's a lot of attacks on endangered species. And I'm just going to check the time. Okay, so there was a letter. It's an open letter to the federal parliamentarians to remove Henry the Eighth exemption powers from Budget Bill C15, and it's saying it's on page 300 of the more than 600 page long budget implementation bill, and it is a constitutional abomination. And then the government can unilaterally change an act of parliament, or the executive, any of the ministers could do that, and they're saying it's an affront to the separation of powers, the constitutional architecture that ensures the systems where parliament makes laws. And then they're saying that the exemption powers do not streamline regulations, they dynamite the rule of law itself by creating a two-tier legislative system whereby laws debated and enacted by Parliament can be suspended for political convenience with little to no accountable. And then they're asking for removal of Part 5, Division 5 of C15, and then there's the French version, and then various groups that have signed, like the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, let's see, West Coast Environmental Law Association, Environmental Defence Canada, Nature Canada. Those 103 different groups. And then Equal Justice has an article about this, and it's called "More Than 100 Experts Warn Bill C15 Threatens Canada's Democratic Foundations." And there's a link to the open letter in the beginning. And then I'll go back to I want to see if I know the train high speed. Okay, so there was an enactment of the High Speed Rail Network Act, which established legislative framework to facilitate the implementation of a rail network that allows for the carrying of passengers at high speed between Quebec and Ontario, and the Act deems the construction of a railway lines that are to be part of the high-speed rail network to have been approved under Section 98 of the Canada Transportation Act. This is problematic because it skips important steps. in terms of regulations and environmental impact studies. This is good that the construction, operation, decommissioning, and abandonment of each section of the high-speed rail network and incidental physical activity is subject to the Impact Assessment Act. Under Bill C5, that wasn't necessarily... They could have skipped the Environmental Assessment Act. So that was... I'm glad that they included that. And then there was amendments to the expiration process in relation to the high-speed rail network. So that's involving like taking land from individuals. And then those indigenous knowledge and confidence in relation to high-speed rail network is treated as confidential. Let's see. And then let's see where I was. Okay, I can go to another article. This is from the National Observer, posted on February 24th by Natasha Boleski. And this was what I was talking about earlier. There have been amendments. Conservatives have made amendments, and it'll have a partial impact on improving the law. There are some groups that are saying that the changes don't go far enough and still allow exemptions from important environmental laws. One of them is increased transparency, public consultation, narrowed definition of what sectors can be exempted, and expanded list of laws that cannot be overwritten. And then 5 amendments that were passed was restricting the application of the law exemption powers to the clean technology or financial technology sector. There was a mandatory 30-day consultation prior to making an exemption, and making exemption orders apply to all companies in the same sector so the government isn't picking winners. So that one, I have concerns about something applying to every company. If it's a problematic piece of legislation, controversial exemption, and then they also require due approval from the minister and the president of the Treasury Board for an exemption order. A report in 90 days, and they require ministers to appeal before committee when requested to explain the exemption. And then prior to the Conservatives making the changes, the only thing that the government was not allowed to change, legislation that the government was not allowed to change, was the Criminal Code, but added all the Access to Information Act, the Auditor General Act, the Canada Elections Act, the Conflict of Interest Act, Export and Import Permits Act, Financial Administration Act, the Foreign Influence, Transparency and Accountability Act, Investment Canada Act, Lobbying Act, Nuclear Safety and Control Act, the Privacy Act, Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Act, and the Public Servants Disclosure Protection Act. But there was really only one environmental law in here, and that's dealing with nuclear. And then Elizabeth May pointed that out, of the Green Party. And I'll go to the next one. Oh, and then this is from February 12th. This says some MPs are alarmed by plan to allow cabinet to exempt entities from certain laws. And then those like quotes from the Bloc Québécois in here. And yeah, so I have time to move on to the next item. This is an article from the National Observer. Vancouver Safe Street advocate hit by a call on the way home from advocacy meeting. And this is in the National Observer by Mark Fawcett Addison. I found the article to be ironic, but I can relate to this living in both Peterborough and Kingston, that there are a lot of places that are not pedestrian friendly, and the advocate is had a broken wrist due to a driver, and was meeting with Vancouver municipal officials about building better bike infrastructure, reducing speed limits, and installing more traffic infraction cameras in the city. And this person, Rhiannon Fox, was a founding member of Vision Zero, Vancouver. And then those like talk about like if the person was going 50 kilometers an hour, the outcome might have been it might have been a worse outcome. And then this intersection was previously identified as being dangerous. And that the neighborhood wouldn't be prioritized for new infrastructure. And I think it should be. Community advocates play an important role in improving the city and raising safety issues. And then there's been 12 crashes since 2020, including cars hitting pedestrians or cyclists. And then the city has fallen behind other cities such as Montreal or Edmonton. And the city has like 500 kilometers of cycling infrastructure, which was, I thought like Vancouver was very climate friendly, but in recent years the the city is making cutbacks or threatening to make cutbacks to the environment. And then traffic fatalities have spiked by 230%. And then the mayor won on a platform on eliminating protected bike lanes in Stanley Park. And passed a budget that slashed funding for cities' planning, urban design, and sustainability departments by 14%. So the budgets have a huge impact on the city. Oh, I'll skip that one and then come back to it. And then there was an article in the Whig Standard. Bill C15 represents an unprecedented overreach. and it's saying that the bill is like 600 pages. It's a challenge to read 600 pages. And 6,000 people have written to the Parliament, to the members of Parliament and Prime Minister Carney, demanding that some of the text be removed. And this group, Seniors for Climate Action Now, is saying that the modifications to the Red Tape Reduction Act are unacceptable. They cannot be fixed and they cannot be constrained by guardrails. They must be removed. And I have... Okay, so I might have time for one article, maybe two. I found this. BC moves at warp speed to change landmark Indigenous rights law, and that's related to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And British Columbia is trying to change the law, and the law is called the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People Act and Interpretation Act. And they're trying to weaken the law, but Indigenous people and nations are opposed to it, opposed to the changes, along with several other groups. And it's going against the very idea of UNDRIP, which is free, prior, and informed consent. There does not appear to be consent with the changes. There's also a public letter to abandon amendments and to, quote, recommit to meaningful implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Declaration Act. And the government and First Nations leaders agree that the act has helped open the Eskay Creek mine and on the Tallahalton Nation territory. But now they're making massive changes to the act. And I'll see what time I have left. So I have about 5 minutes left. I found this article. Ottawa sued over delayed protection of impaired caribou habitat. I might go into that article on a different episode. I'll see if there's anything new in the Environmental Bill of Rights. I want environmental registry. And I'll do last 7 days, policy, regulation, and act. So those a protected area expansion for Missinalby Provincial Park and Woodley Caribou Provincial Park, and that has a number of 019-8972, and you can comment on that until April 5th. And I'll see if there's any proposed amendment to the Parkway Belt West Plan and Municipal Zoning Order. That has a number of 026-0165, and you can comment on that until March 15th. And then there's some other ones as well. Alright, and I do plan on following Donald Trump's speech. I'm not watching it live, but I will make a video about anything that was said about the environment, because Trump has made several environmental threats, and I can update an older video that I made about Trump and the environmental policies, and on my YouTube page, Environmental Soup, I can look at the NDP leadership race, and I know that there was a environmental focused debate with the candidates. I'm interested in looking at that. But that'll most likely be on YouTube only. I don't know if I'll make a I don't know if I'll make it onto the radio. I haven't decided. And yeah, I think that's everything that I plan for today. Oh, I will be making a speech at Toastmaster. I'm on level 1, and it'll be about the environmental. There'll be a focus on the environmental Bill of Rights, and let's see. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day. And I wish you success on your midterms if you have any. And welcome back if you went away on reading week. Welcome back. And thank you for listening to my shows through the facilities of Trent Radio.